with you guys about solar and battery for businesses. It's something that we're getting more and more requests for. A lot of companies see the benefit because energy prices are only going one way, and energy security is a big thing for businesses too. And certainly building out our Artisan HQ, that's one of the things that I've been really concerned about, is how do we make sure that we've got energy security, we've got data security, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, in this video I just thought I'd jump on with you guys and see what your thoughts are about energy security for businesses. Should every business in the world have solar and battery storage? I'd love to know your thoughts. Drop your comments below where you're joining from. Nice to see a few of you coming in and joining us this morning for this little impromptu live stream where we're talking about solar and battery for businesses. Is it worth it? Should every business have solar and battery storage? I'd love to know all of your thoughts. For me, our business is an interesting test case, and this is why it's kind of got it's got commercial and industrial solar more on my radar over the last year, because as we planned our new HQ, it is one of the things that obviously we wanted to showcase because it's something that we do as a business, but also it just makes sense, right? You're gonna have to get electricity from somewhere. Electricity is not cheap. So if we can generate a lot of our own electricity and store it, then that's the perfect solution. Now it's winter right now, and well, coming into winter anyway. We're end of October, beginning of November. It's getting dark, it's getting cold, the days are getting shorter, but we're still at this point in time about 80% self-sufficient, which I think is pretty amazing, really. And I can see from some of you guys in the comments that you've mentioned that, you know, Tom Penty says my company is looking at it, but the big upfront is putting them off. And that's reality, isn't it? Like there is a big upfront cost to it. However, for businesses, there are also interesting ways of financing it. So that's definitely something that is interesting to look at as well, where you can get very good finance deals for things like solar now, like asset finance or like leasing options. There's loads of different options out there for business owners, and it means that you can spread the costs over and kind of include them as part of your overheads, I guess. But then that brings in another factor for me, which is actually about energy security. So it's not just being able to generate your own solar power and use it to reduce your bills, but actually what happens if there's a power cut? Business interruption can cost a fortune, and with, you know, energy security being high on people's radars because of things that have happened in the past, like the wars that happen from time to time, and other things, you know, natural disasters, events that occur, it's more and more of a concern for business owners that actually, how would my business cope if I lost power to everything? So having a backup source of power by means of a battery system that's connected to your solar is another thing that for me has been brilliant, because I know that if there's a power cut, we're not even going to notice. Our business just carries on running, which gives me a real peace of mind. It's just that extra level of protection to make sure that your business is still going to run no matter what happens, basically. And I've just realised that I've plugged the car in, but it's not charging yet, so give me a second. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments and we'll discuss it. Yeah, EV charger installer, can't get the Tesla supercharger working. Just says ready to charge, but it's not charging, so that's bizarre. That's the first time that a supercharger has not worked for me. Now it's working. Now we're all good. So the reason I'm charging the car this morning, I'm at 56%, but we're heading down to London today doing a feasibility study for a theatre in the centre of London, which is quite exciting. And this is why I wanted to do this live stream, just to talk to you guys about some of these things, because it's clear from what we're seeing as a business that a lot of other businesses are thinking about this stuff. I think as well with, you know, ESG goals being really pushed hard now for businesses. You know, energy saving is high on people's agendas. Certainly for larger businesses, it's something that they realise is quite important. How can we save energy? How can we reduce our impact, our carbon impact? And how can we future-proof ourselves against rising energy prices? How can we get that energy security of knowing that if there was a power cut, our business would still run? There's so many different factors to it. And I think in the past, it's only been solar, right? Which was this, you know, good element if you're using loads of power during the day. Obviously, if you can generate a load of that from the sun, it's going to save you money on your bills. But now there are so many other layers to it that make it even more interesting, like battery technology to store any excess solar that you generate and use it to run all of your background stuff overnight. Because what I've learned is that although most of our energy use is during the day, there is a base level of usage just to keep the building ticking over overnight, which is about 1.4, 1.5 kilowatt at the moment. I'm trying to dive into it a little bit more to see, you know, what devices are using that power. But actually over a 10-hour period, 12-hour period, that's, you know, 2 kilowatt hours of energy. No, sorry, much more than that. 20 kilowatt hours. I'm still waking up. Of energy that the building is using, and we've got to get it from somewhere, right? So if we're not storing our solar in the batteries, we're going to be pulling from the grid overnight, and that's why having those batteries has really been helpful to us. But there's that additional element of, if you've got batteries with the capability to run off grid, you've got backup power, that adds a whole nother level of energy security to your business. So I can see that Boy Gotcha says, is today's battery technology truly mature enough for long-term investment, or are we still too early? Oh, it's definitely mature enough now. I mean, battery technology has come of age for sure. Like, there are still innovations happening, but in general, it's very small gains now. You know, in the past, there have been big leaps with new battery technologies that have come out, like lithium iron phosphate was a big jump from the standard lithium ion or nickel manganese cobalt NMC technology that was being used, for example, the Tesla Powerwall 2s. That's a big jump in efficiency, but also safety. The thing that we are seeing at the moment that is going to come soon is sodium-ion technology. We've just installed our first sodium battery, which is basically salt, which is quite cool. But it's not really a leap in terms of like price per kilowatt hour or energy density particularly. It's more about sustainability and safety. So there will be increases in certain areas, but actually ultimately the biggest increases I think have already happened, and now it's just going to be a slow decline in price per kilowatt hour. I think as manufacturing ramps up and more of these batteries are produced, the prices will still continue to go down with batteries. But ultimately they're a really good price point now that it makes sense for a lot of people to invest in battery storage technology to future-proof their business, to get that energy security. The Jim Boboy says, should businesses with large roof space be legally forced to install solar? That's a good question. I don't think you should legally force anyone to do anything, to be honest. I think that's just a way to get people annoyed. Actually, it makes sense financially for most businesses to do that if they're using a lot of energy. That's the thing. If your business is not using a lot of energy, it's a bit like a residential scenario. What we find when customers approach us is if they're high energy users, then the calculations make a lot more sense if you're purely viewing it from a return on investment perspective. You get your money back way quicker if you're using a ton of energy, basically. If you hardly use any energy, it's a bit pointless, because what you're going to get paid for export is not very much. The actual bill reduction is not very much. So high business energy use is exactly the same thing, right? The more power you use in your business, the more it makes financial sense to get solar. Is it truly cost effective in the UK? I'm in Australia, where they're having to upgrade the grid due to the feed in of solar, causing a raise in supply voltage. Yeah, I mean, Australia's a really interesting use case, because Australia is quite far ahead of us in terms of the rollout of solar. I think the wave that we're seeing now happened about 10 years ago in Australia. So most homes in Australia have solar, and the market is pretty much saturated. And like you say, the interesting challenge with that is actually the grid is kind of saturated with solar energy. And what that means is that people have to pay to export power now. It's gone the other way in Australia, where here we get paid to export power to the grid because it helps put clean energy onto the grid. In Australia, they charge you if you want to export power to the grid, because there's actually too much solar energy on the grid at certain times. But I think that's where, again, battery technology has now come of age, and I see that, for example, Tesla are rolling out these big mega packs in places like Australia, where they do have a lot of clean energy, but during the day, you know, it's all about stabilizing and smoothing out the grid and that clean energy curve that happens during the day. How do we flatten that out using battery storage? And that's what we do on an individual level when we design a system for a homeowner or a business owner. But actually, that's happening on a grid scale now as well, with huge, you know, grid scale battery systems that are designed to basically help smooth out that curve, suck up a lot of that excess solar energy that's happening in the peak of the day, store it, use it to provide green energy to the grid overnight, and also be able to help smooth out the peaks and troughs that happen. So for example, you know, at 5 o'clock, when everyone gets home from work and they turn the kettle on, you know, that spike is often a very dirty spike, in inverted commas, in the grid, where a load of peaker plants have to kick in and loads of fossil fuels are burnt to produce that spike in energy that's needed. If you've got a ton of batteries just ready to deploy some excess energy, and you can cover that spike for an hour or whatever with renewable energy that's been stored, it's an ideal solution.